Our planet looks alive from space, a blue and green marble pulsing with oceans and cities. About 71% of Earth is covered in water, and the remaining 29% forms the continents we know so well. 6 great landmasses, each stamped with highways, lights, and the fingerprints of human civilization in the 21st century. But there is one exception: a continent at the very bottom of the globe, cut off, isolated, and for a very long time, almost completely unknown. Antarctica. Sitting on the southernmost point of Earth, Antarctica is the only continent entirely separated from the rest of the world. Because it's so remote and so harsh, humanity spent centuries never really knowing it was there. Only in 1909 did a polar expedition, led by Ernest Shackleton, finally reach the South Pole, confirming that a vast frozen landmass truly existed. Today, we're told Antarctica is empty. Temperatures often sit below -25 degrees Celsius. No cities, no permanent residents, just ice and wind. Or at least, that's what we've always been told. So the question is Antarctica really uninhabited? Or is something or someone simply hidden from us? In this video, we're going to follow the clues and dive into what might be waiting beneath the ice of Antarctica. Before we step any deeper into Antarctica's shadows, we need to start with the woman at the center of almost every major revelation tied to this icy continent: Linda Moulton Howe. Back in 1968, she earned her master's degree in communications from Stanford University. A solid academic beginning. But the path her career would take was anything but ordinary. Linda became a journalist and documentary filmmaker, drawn to the kinds of stories most reporters avoided: strange events, unexplained phenomena, things that didn't fit neatly into any category. Then came the turning point. In the 1970s, ranchers across the United States began reporting a wave of bizarre cattle mutilations. Cows were found dead in open fields under chillingly similar circumstances. Eyes removed, tongues cut clean, reproductive organs taken with surgical precision. Their bodies were drained of blood, yet the ground beneath them was spotless, as if the animals had been lowered gently into place. And the night before many of these incidents, witnesses described seeing bright, silent objects moving across the sky, unidentified flying craft. Linda dove into the mystery head first. The deeper she investigated, the stranger it became. She eventually produced a documentary titled A Strange Harvest. The film won a regional Emmy and placed her firmly on the map as a voice willing to confront the unexplainable. By 1989, she published An Alien Harvest, where she finally stated her conclusion: these events might be tied to extraterrestrial life and possibly even human abductions. From that moment on, something shifted. People who'd stayed silent for years, pilots, engineers, military personnel, government insiders, began seeking her out. They wanted to tell her what they had seen, but they couldn't tell anyone else, and what they believed the world wasn't ready to hear. And one day, among the flood of confidential messages, came a letter that would drag Linda and all of us toward Antarctica. On January 2nd, 2015, Linda Moulton Howe opened an email that would change the direction of her investigations. It arrived through her website, Earth Files, a platform she'd built to document everything from scientific anomalies to eyewitness accounts. The sender signed only one name: Brian. Brian introduced himself plainly. He had served in the U.S. Navy since 1977, working as a flight engineer on the LC-130, the ski-equipped transport aircraft used for missions in Antarctica. Then he began describing the place where his story truly lived: Antarctica, a continent that feels empty at a distance but becomes stranger the longer you stay. Brian wrote that his first deployment to the ice was during the 1984-85 season, and he returned almost every year until 1997. As a flight engineer, he wasn't tied to a single station like most scientists. He moved constantly, from McMurdo to the South Pole, then out to isolated field camps that sat like tiny dots on a sheet of white stretching to the horizon. He saw parts of Antarctica that few people ever approach, let alone understand. He described the environment the way only those who have lived in it can. How the cold slices through layers of clothing, how a clear sky can vanish behind a wall of white in minutes, how silence becomes so heavy it almost presses against your ears. But flights went on, no matter the weather. The austral summer, a short window from October to February, was a non-stop chain of missions. Cargo runs, fuel drops, science support, emergency evacuations. In that rhythm, isolated moments began to stand out. Small things at first. Far out over the Transantarctic mountains, he and his crew started noticing flashes of metallic movement, silver discs gliding above the ridgelines. Not close, not threatening, just there. Sometimes darting across multiple peaks in seconds, sometimes hovering, reflecting the sun in a way that didn't match drifting ice crystals or aircraft. The crew tried to explain it away, but season after season, the sightings returned. And then came the moment that became the heart of Brian's letter. And one mission, in particular, would force him to confront that truth directly. A mission that took place in 1995. During the 1994-95 season, a technician at a station, McMurdo, in all likelihood, suffered a severe injury. The LC-130 crew took the call, loaded the patient, and flew to the station near Sport for refueling. The plan was simple: fuel up, stay clear of the forbidden zone, then head to the destination with better medical equipment. But shortly after landing and taking on fuel, the patient's condition crashed. He slipped into a sudden coma. There was no time to take the long route anymore. In that moment, the crew made a decision they were never supposed to make. They flew straight through the no-fly zone, taking the shortest possible line. As they crossed the boundary, Brian looked out the window, and the world below him changed. He saw a massive opening carved into the ice, nothing like a natural crevasse. It was clean-edged, geometric, a wide, descending ramp cut deep into the continent. The size stunned him, roughly the length of a football field. Down its slope was nothing but darkness. Around it, the snow showed heavy vehicle tracks, clear signs that machines had been moving toward the opening. There were no stations nearby, no camps, no structures the crew knew about. Yet someone, or something, was using that entrance. The crew exchanged looks, said nothing, and kept flying. Their patient was the priority. Curiosity had to wait. When they finally landed and handed the injured man over to medical staff, the crew expected the usual post-mission procedures. Instead, they were escorted into a small room. A man Brian didn't recognize walked in, closed the door, and spoke only one message. What you saw, you will not talk about. Then he left. There was no discussion, no explanation. Just a curiously calm order to forget what had happened minutes earlier. Over the seasons that followed, small hints began surfacing, pieces that never fit neatly together. During an evening gathering at another station, an officer mentioned that a set of visitors had recently arrived at the same air sampling station, the one near the no-fly zone. The word struck Brian immediately. People didn't come to Antarctica as visitors. Everyone had a purpose: scientists, support staff, military logistics, or official personnel. The casual, ambiguous visitors didn't make sense. And around those same periods, the discs returned, flashing over the mountains, distant and silent, always just far enough away to keep their secrets. Brian wasn't trying to explain them. He sent Linda the only proof he could: his service documents, his medal, and a detailed account of more than a decade working across the continent. Everything he described was anchored in places Linda could verify: stations, seasons, flight patterns, and the daily realities of Antarctic operations. He ended the letter without drama, almost quietly. And for Linda, that was enough. Enough to take the story seriously, enough to dig deeper, and enough to wonder what else might be hidden under a continent the world still calls empty. And yet, His testimony was only the beginning, because after Brian came another witness, someone with a far more dangerous assignment and a discovery that went even deeper beneath the ice. 3 years after Brian's letter, on July 19, 2018, Linda received another message. This time it was from a man who said he was a former U.S. Navy Special Operations veteran. He sent a map. On that map, he had drawn a single red dot, and he told Linda, "Right there, that's where you'll find a structure that goes down into the earth." When Linda compared his mark with the locations she already had from Brian's testimony, a chill ran down her spine. A second witness, pointing to the same place on the map, Linda agreed to hear him out. To protect his identity, she would blur his face, alter his voice, and refer to him only by a code name, Spartan 1. According to Spartan 1, his connection to Antarctica began years earlier, in 2003. That year, an American satellite equipped with ice-penetrating radar scanned a sector near McMurdo Station. What it detected wasn't ice or rock, but a structure, geometric, artificial, buried nearly 3 kilometers beneath the surface. The discovery triggered an immediate response. A military team was deployed to investigate, and Spartan 1's assignment was clear: escort the scientific specialists safely inside whatever lay below. By the time Spartan's unit arrived, another team had already excavated part of the site. What emerged from the ice looked to nothing like natural stone. A corner of an enormous octagonal building, carved from black basalt, jutted out of the frozen wall. And then came the first shock. Set into that exposed section was a colossal doorway. But unlike a sealed vault or a welded hatch, this door opened with barely any pressure at all. No machinery groaning, no hydraulics, just a light push, and it swung inward. Beyond it stretched a long corridor, sloping downward into the darkness. At the far end was a second door, one that slid vertically, lifting up and lowering down like some kind of precision-engineered barrier. Inside, everything changed. Outside, the temperature hovered around minus 40 degrees Celsius. Inside the structure, it was roughly 20 degrees Celsius, room temperature. No heaters, no vents, no visible machinery. The walls glowed with a soft blue light, as if illuminated from within. Not bulbs, not fixtures, just light embedded in the stone itself. And the deeper they went, the larger the complex became. Spartan 1 estimated the interior stretched across 62 acres, an underground facility of staggering scale. And considering its depth, there was almost no possibility it had been built on top of existing ice. If it was carved before Antarctica froze, then it could date back tens of millions of years to a time when the continent was warm, forested, and free of ice, a conclusion consistent with geological studies showing Antarctica was temperate around 34 million years ago, which raised the question that no one on that mission could answer. Who built it, and for what purpose? And according to Spartan 1, this facility was built by a group of aliens involved in genetically modifying humans. Even before the letters from Brian and Spartan 1, Linda sensed that Antarctica carried an aura of mystery, a feeling she could never quite shake. Something about the continent didn't match its reputation as a barren, untouched wasteland. When she turned her attention to history, she realized powerful nations had been quietly obsessed with this icy frontier for far longer than most people knew. Take World War II. Amid the chaos and destruction sweeping across Europe, Adolf Hitler made an unusual decision, not once, but twice, to send expeditions to Antarctica. Why would a regime fighting for survival divert precious resources to one of the most remote places on Earth? What could possibly be so important at the bottom of the world that even a collapsing empire felt compelled to reach for it? And then came what happened after the war. Almost immediately following Germany's surrender, the United States launched a massive operation toward Antarctica, not a scientific mission. Not a symbolic gesture, a military deployment on a scale that didn't match any official explanation. The U.S. mobilized 13 ships, 33 aircraft, more than 4,500 personnel, sailors, marines, support crews, all sent to a continent that, according to textbooks, had nothing on it but ice. To Linda, and many who studied these events, it was hard to see such movements as routine. As the years went on, the letters didn't stop. More former servicemen, more technicians, more insiders who claimed they had seen something they weren't supposed to see. One after another, they reached out to Linda with stories that all pointed toward the same unsettling possibility, that somewhere beneath Antarctica's ice, a secret installation might truly exist. For Linda, this wasn't a conclusion she jumped to lightly. She had spent decades separating rumor from evidence, speculation from testimony. But the pattern was impossible to ignore. First, the people contacting her weren't anonymous internet voices. They provided credentials, military IDs, service records, photos. Some even met with her in person, and nearly all of them insisted on anonymity afterward, not to gain fame or attention, but because they feared retaliation or simply wanted the truth documented before they died. Second, none of these individuals knew one another. They came from different branches, different years, different backgrounds, yet the details in their stories lined up. The no-fly zones, the sightings, the underground structures, the strange visitors, the orders to keep silent. Linda developed a simple principle for evaluating stories like these. If one person tells you something unbelievable, you can doubt it. If two unrelated people tell you the same unbelievable thing, you pay attention. But if dozens of people, strangers to one another, describe the same events, the same locations, and the same symbols, then, as Linda put it, you'd better stop dismissing it and start thinking very seriously. So after everything you've heard, the testimonies, the history, the clues buried under miles of ice, what do you think? Is Antarctica truly empty, just frozen wilderness? Or is there something hidden beneath the surface? Something governments, pilots, and soldiers have quietly brushed up against for decades? Maybe you believe the witnesses, maybe you don't. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, unsure, but unable to ignore how strangely all the pieces fit together. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what part of this story struck you the most, or what theory you think makes the most sense. Thank you for watching and for keeping an open mind. If you'd like to explore more mysteries like this one, feel free to check out the other videos on the channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next.